Melissa Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the member opposite, my dear friend Rajan, for his considered contribution to this debate. Considering he doesn't actually sit on the Commerce Select Committee, I actually like to think that he actually either studied it or he had really good speaking notes. That is aside from his colleague who actually delivered from the opposition, Stuart Nash. Until the last sentence, he actually looked like the Labour Party actually had a fan club for our Honourable Simon Powers. And he did so well, too, until the last sentence. So I commend him for his positive contribution, recognising the wonderful work that our ministers are, in fact, doing. This bill is about licensing regimes for major audits for the likes of banks, insurance companies and companies listed on the stock exchange. If I could quote an example which is actually non-accounting related, it's like one of the reasons why the Auckland City Council amalgamated was to provide standards across the whole city and having a vision for the region rather than being replicated over so many councils across Auckland region. And this bill is actually providing that accounting standard like what Auckland Council is actually doing. This bill recognises the fact that with the advent of the financial market failures, audit companies that manage substantial investments from the public must be performed by people who are best at what they do, meaning top echelons of people. It is to protect the monies of the public that are invested. It is to restore the confidence back into the finance companies and the confidence that was actually lost by the mums and pas of New Zealand who had invested a lot of money, and with the advent of the financial market failures, they've lost a lot of money. This is part of what the government is actually doing to return the confidence. It's a great bill. I commend it to the House.
Are you seeking a call?
Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Rick Barker.
Mr. Speaker, when people reflect on the progress of human history and look at the important elements of it, they usually start with philosophers like Plato and Socrates, and they look at the great mathematicians like Archimedes and Euclid. And we also think about the great physicists and the poets and the composers, but no one puts on their list an accountant. But the fact is that a Dutchman who devised double-entry accounting for the first time probably has had more influence on our lives than any of the others that go before. We are all subject to having sets of accounts and the tyranny of accrual accounting. This place is run on accrual accounting, and every government establishment is run on accrual accounting. The member rejects that it might be cruel accounting, but it can be. But one of the great reforms of the 1980s was putting the government books onto accrual accounting, and the reforms that flowed with that. And people did that at the time to ensure that the government's books were accurate. And people need to be able to rely upon the figures and to make judgments for it. And we have seen some terrible examples around the world where those figures have proven sadly inaccurate. And I draw your attention, Mr. Speaker, to, for example, World.com, a massive company which collapsed into a shower of nothing, Enron, and we've had other major accountancy companies have suffered as a consequence, such as Anderson & Co. We've had the global financial crisis, where banks have melted down and people have lost millions. We've had finance companies in New Zealand going crash, all because the accounting systems were inadequate. The numbers that they represented proved not to be a reality.
Order. I'm sorry to interrupt the member. The time has come for me to leave the chair for the luncheon adjournment. I shall resume the chair at 2 p.m.